Hey YouTube, Brian LCS. Thanks for stopping by the channel. And this video, my first episode of a new show, Comic Book Community 411. So I'm dipping my toe into the interview series. And the goal with this is to touch base with some community members and learn a little bit more about them. So the whole 411 is going to be 4 comic book questions, 1 random question, and the final question is going to be a question that the guests would like me to ask them. So please, I hope you will follow this series along. And let's get to our first guest, Mr. SuperRus 9000. Hey Russ, thanks for joining me on my first ever episode of the Comic Book Community 411.
Thanks for the invite, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so the idea is we're going to I'm going to ask you a couple questions, some comic book related collecting questions, and then 2 random questions. So 4. So that's kind of why the show is titled 411. Obviously, that's information, but we'll do 4 comic book related questions and then 2 random questions. So my first question: how did you get into comic book collecting?
Oh man, it started when I was a kid. I was about 13 years old, and I picked up my first comic book on the shelf in this little gas station called Jerry's Market, and I just started flipping through it, and it hooked me, and I spent my lunch money on it right there. And like every day walking to school, I would like stop in there and spend my lunch money on the newest comic book.
And that's how I first got started. Was I used to pick up books at 7-Eleven, my local 7-Eleven. And it was great back in the day where you could just walk into a convenience store or gas station or even a
Yeah,
supermarket, hit the magazine section and find comic books.
yeah,
And
that
I
was
I
really
had
cool.
no idea when I first started buying books. I had no idea like the frequency that they came out. So it was like anytime you went to the store, you would just kind of check in to see if there was a new book that you might be interested in.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know anything at that time about comic book stores or collectability of them or anything. I was just, like, there for the stories.
Yeah. No, I was always a Spider-Man fan, so early on I was aware of him, and so that was when I saw comic books with Spider-Man, that kind of hooked me, pretty
Yeah.
early. So tell me about your YouTube channel. So how did you make the transition from, collecting books from an early age to jumping to an actual YouTube channel and creating content around collecting and comic books?
Oh, man, the YouTube channel started, a long time ago, actually, before I got into collecting really at all. I actually started probably 8 or 9 years ago doing, like, slideshow videos of, like, Smallville and NCIS and just these, like I would put, like, these pictures together and set it to music and upload it to YouTube, and, I did that for a year or 2, and then I quit doing that and, just kinda disappeared from offline for years, and when I came back and started the collectibles channel, I saw that, like, all those videos were, like, flagged for copyrighted music and stuff, and all the audio was
Oh,
muted. So I deleted all those and decided to start fresh with collectibles and stuff. And I believe it was August 2017, and I
oh wow,
started
okay.
with Funko Pops.
I didn't realize that you've been on YouTube that long, and I've heard that a few times with people where they've had a channel and maybe then went away for a while
Yeah,
and have come back.
yeah. I've been like officially like saying like I would officially say I've been on for like 4.5 years because when I started doing the collectible stuff is when I really started focusing on it and like just doing it more. So I count that as like my official start.
Okay. And you said you started with more on the pops or toy
Yeah,
side than
yeah. I
comics?
started with like just for the first maybe year and a half. I was just doing Funko Pop stuff because I was back into collecting comic books at that time, but I was just like trying to get all the like stuff that I had from when I was a kid back in the collection because I just had to sell a lot of it like years ago when I stopped collecting. But
Okay.
I'd never thought about doing comic books on YouTube at that time. It wasn't until I started kind of getting burned out on collecting Funko Pops that I started meeting some of the people from the comic book community. And one of the first ones was Matt, the boy who had Seven Talks comic books. And that kind of inspired me to start shifting my focus to comics on YouTube.
Okay. Yeah, and that's interesting too because I've only been on YouTube for about a year, creating my own content. I mean, I've
Yeah,
been aware of YouTube and had a chat, had a couple little personal videos uploaded and watch videos here and there, but really the last year I've been really focused in on creating content around comic books. But I always find it interesting to hear stories of past, people that have been on in the past or some of the history behind some of the comic book channels because there's some channels that have been around a very long time and there's been kind of an influx over the last 2 years with COVID and everything else. So to hear kind of the history of how things started, I heard somebody mentioned recently that there were really no live streams back in, live streams are just really kind of a newer thing, more recent, and that
yeah,
it was more just pre-recorded videos and reviews and things like that. So it's always kind of interesting to get the history lesson on the community on YouTube. So what thinking about YouTube and the comic book community, what what is your biggest complaint or thing, something that you don't like about collecting or the community?
oh man, it's hard to say because stuff that I don't like about collecting, I just shy away from anyway. Like, I don't care for the speculation side of collecting comics. I've always been just more about the characters and the stories and what they meant to me. So, as far as not liking, I just stay away from like the speculation side of collecting. The community, I can't really think of anything I don't like about the community. It's um it's like it was night and day coming from the Funko community to the comic book community. Because at the time, the Funko community was in very like tight knit groups. I only knew like maybe 5 people when I first started that were like just really cool, welcoming people, and it seemed like the rest of the Funko community was just more about themselves and growing themselves. They didn't really care about community or anything.
Okay.
And when I went from that to the comic book community, it was like it was unreal because when Matt, the boy who had seven, brought me in and started introducing me to everybody, it was like it didn't matter. Big channels up here, small channels down here. Everybody just treated you like you were like family right away and just welcomed you in.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly the experience that I've had since I've been on with with my channel is that it's a very welcoming group of people, and really supportive of one another, which is great. And I think that's where some of the newer channels, even my channel included, we've had a little bit of an advantage because I think the community has grown so much over the last couple of years that it's easier for us to have gotten started and maybe grow our subscriber count than say somebody who's been around a little bit longer, because there's just it seems like there's an influx of new channels,
Yeah,
so it definitely seems like there has been certainly an advantage, to be able to grow quicker more recently. So um, what about um, what about a comic book or a character? If you could, reboot a character or reboot a
Yeah.
storyline, if you were in control of a comic book or a character, who would it be and what would you do with it?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Um, I would have to go with Superman for me. It would have to be Superman, and I would probably. 'Cause I'm like very biased to the '90s because that's when I started collecting, and that's where like 90% of my favorite stories come from. So I'd probably just like go back to the legacy number and then pick up from the late '90s in the story and kind of just go from there and just kind of keep that classic feel to me. It's kind of weird saying the '90s has a classic feel now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, at this point, the '90s are almost,
Yeah,
it's 20 something years ago. So it's like,
yeah.
I know. Believe me, I started collecting in the '80s. So when I
Yeah.
say that, I feel it.
But that's
So
just the era. I guess I'm just like very biased to that era because I guess everybody is the era they grew up on. It's just their favorite.
yeah, it's kind of their sweet spot, right? It's
Yeah,
the spot that got us hooked and why we love, the characters and the books. So yeah, but that's interesting because Superman, so Spider Man is my favorite character, and so you both characters with a huge legacy. So to be able to reboot that or change it, you're kind of you could potentially upset people because
yeah,
you have people that have been collecting those characters for such a long time. So
yeah.
that's an interesting choice. I think that would be a tall
So
task, but
for me, another thing that was great about it is back in the day there was like 4 Superman titles. So every week you were getting a new book instead of having to wait like monthly. They had the Man of Steel, Superman, um, what else? The Adventures of Superman, and Action Comics.
right.
And they even added a fifth title with Man of Tomorrow for a little while. So it was
Well,
like there was always a
yeah,
new
you always
Superman
had a
story to
Superman
read.
story,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, I mean that was the same way for me in the '80s. We had for Spider-Man, you had Amazing Spider-Man, you had Spectacular Spider-Man, you had Marvel Team Up who had Spider-Man,
yeah,
and then they launched Web of Spider-Man, and then there was the new Todd McFarlane series Spider-Man. So there were plenty of Spider-Man stories to go around.
yeah,
Um, and it was a little easier to collect back then too because you only had 13 issues a year. You had one a month, and you had one annual, and there was very limited variant covers when I first started collecting. So it you picked up the cover A, and that was it. And there were no multiple. It wasn't being published multiple times a month, so
yeah.
it was a little bit easier on the wallet. Back in the day. Okay, so we talked about four, and that was I'm going to stick to it. Those were my four comic book related questions, and now I'm just going to give you a total random question.
Okay.
Um, and my question this week is, what is your favorite fast food chain?
Oh man. Um, I gotta say Jack in the Box.
Wow, Jack in the Box.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I love the number six, the ultimate cheeseburger combo.
nice. We
That's
don't
like my
have a
go-to.
we don't have too many Jack in the Boxes here. We used to when I was a kid. I remember a few, but they're not that many around these days
Yeah.
by me anyway. All right, so now the last question was going to be a question that the guest could ask me to ask, but you didn't come up with one, so I'm going to give you an option here. I'm going to
All
give me a
right.
number. So I have a list of 50 questions. So just give me a number between 1 and 50, and whatever number you pick, that's the question I'm going to ask.
4.
4. Okay. Well, that's a good one. Have you ever had a nickname, and what was it or what is it?
That's funny. It's like I got to talk about the SuperRus channel name. It was actually a friend of mine back when I was the Funko channel, Iron Archer Studios. that when I was thinking about changing my channel name, because back then it was just Russman80, and that was it. That was the channel, and I was wanting to change my channel name when I was getting into other stuff, and we were bouncing ideas off of each other. And he's the one that actually came up with SuperRus,
Nice.
and I added the 9,000 because I'm such a big Dragon Ball Z fan, and the famous line by Vegeta, "It's over 9,000." So, and that's been kind of it ever
Kind of stuck.
since.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. I wondered about the name because I had a similar issue when I started. Like when I first started my channel, it was just called LCS, and when I initially got back into collecting, I had no idea even what LCS stood for initially. Like
yeah,
the acronym was, local comic shop, but I knew it was a term that I had heard a lot of. So I was like, oh, I'll name my channel LCS. And then, people were saying, wow, it's really hard to find your channel based just on, being LCS. And so that's when I changed it to, Brian. And I've often considered over the last year, like, man, I probably really need to change this name to something else, but I haven't come up with anything else. So it's, but Super Rust 9000 is pretty easy to search on YouTube and find. It's,
yeah,
you don't come up with too many others with a similar name. So
yeah. It's
it's
funny. I
pretty
went
easy.
through several different channel names. For a while, I was Russman's Fun Collectibles when I was like doing the Funko thing, and then I switched to like RLM's Comics and Collectibles, and then I finally just decided to drop like Comics and Collectibles off of it and just do the Super Rush, because that way I feel like I'm more open to do more variety of things on the channel instead of just like sticking to comics or sticking to Funko or other collectibles.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's probably a good approach, right? Having something that's a little bit more generic so that if, over time um, your focus shifts a little bit, or if you want to start introducing other types of content, you're not kind of, tied into a particular, niche.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because every now and again I just like to throw just random skits out there, just something that has nothing to do with collectible stuff.
Right. Yeah, and sometimes those are some of the best videos, I think, too. I've seen other channels do, just random videos, or, Slim Comics and More does his, fam day on
Oh
Sundays where he's
yeah,
out with the family. Those are just great,
those are great.
yeah, slices of life type videos that I enjoy. So, all right. So were the six questions that I wanted to ask. But tell me a little bit. What we didn't talk about really is just overall about your channel. I know you're doing a video a day challenge for this year,
Yeah.
trying to create a bunch of content. So, just tell me a little bit about what you got going on at your channel.
Well, the thing is, I never really have a plan. I never know like what I'm gonna film until like a few minutes before an idea just pops in my head, and I film it, edit it as quick as I can, and just try to get it out before the day's over with. But I've tried to do schedules and plans, and I've tried to script stuff, and it just never really works. It always seems better when I just improvise.
Yeah, more spontaneous. Yeah, no, I agree. I think I don't think I could be that scripted or that polished. I think I would be too much of a perfectionist. So I think just spontaneous. Like you said, let the start recording and just
Yeah.
see what happens type thing. Um,
Doing it that way, I have to do a lot more editing because I just have to edit out like so many pauses and just like mm, and like when a thought just leaves my brain and I forget what I was going to say, just have to edit all that stuff out.
yeah, I've noticed that. I've tried to be more aware of that when I'm speaking, or if I do a review of a comic book. There's a lot of I'm kind of collecting my next thought, but
Yeah.
you know I think you could drive yourself, a little crazy trying to make it perfect. So sometimes it's just best to just, you know, like you said, record it and see what you come up with, edit it down a little bit, make it a little bit smoother or, easier to watch. But I think at the end of the day, um, you don't want to drive yourself too crazy with, perfection.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so you, and like I said, I know the video a day. You've hit 1,000 subscribers. That's a big milestone.
Yeah.
Congratulations! But I know is part of the reason why you're doing the um, a video a day to help drive some of your your watch hours. I know that's I think you've talked a little bit about that being one of your goals.
Yeah, that's definitely a goal now. Now that I got the 1,000, the goal is to get the watch time up. And one of the things I've started doing is shorts videos, and those, like the ones that take off and get thousands of views, 11, 12, 15-second videos end up bringing in like 5 to 10 hours of watch time. But when they don't take off, you just try again. And
Right,
the good thing about the shorts is they take very little effort.
right. There's not a lot of
Yeah.
time invested, right? Yeah,
And
yeah.
the live streams, they help a lot. Like I know some channels that just start with live streams. By the time they hit 1,000 subs, they've already got the watch time.
Right, because of
Yeah.
the yeah.
And with me, when I first started, I was like so nervous and anxious. I was scared to death to do a live stream. I didn't really get comfortable doing live streams until probably a little less than a year ago. So
Wow,
I
and that's
just kind
probably
of
when
started doing the live stream thing.
yeah, and that's probably when I just started, I was on YouTube and I found your channel. And, I think most of the live streams I've ever seen anybody on, they've really done a good job. And I've watched some of your recent live streams and you definitely don't seem like you're
Yeah.
nervous at this point.
Well,
Like,
it only took me about 3 years to get comfortable.
all right. So I caught you at the right time, I guess.
Yeah.
So, all right. So anything else that you want to mention about your channel or about yourself before we wrap up?
Um, I can't really think of anything.
All right. Well, links will be down below. So please go check out Russ's channel, sub him up, watch some of his video, help him get that watch time up. He's putting out, like I said, a video a day, and some of them are, 15, 20 seconds. Some of them are 3 minutes. Some of them are, an hour long live stream. So you definitely want to go check out his channel and help, help support one of our, great community members. So, but Russ, thanks very much for being my first guest on this new show. So, when when I hit 100 episodes of this, or maybe I don't know if I'll go that long, but we'll have you back on at some point.
All right.
Since you're
I
my
appreciate you
my
having me
first
on, man.
guest. So, but thanks for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, man. It was fun.
All right.